Out in the cold, out in the dark, something's lurking at the edge of the park. People be warned, people beware, there's a storm on the rise and it's covered in hair. Hear him cry, hear him howl, looking for someone to disembowel. Claws like a hook, eyes like coal, feet so big they're gonna crush your soul. They call him Sasquatch.
This is Yowie Central. Welcome to the show. You're on 94.9 Main FM and you're with Sarah Bignall. This is the community radio show where we bring you the latest on Yowie research in Australia. And we delve into the vast and endlessly fascinating realm of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, cryptozoology from here and around the world. And we go into all sorts of weird stuff, paranormal encounters, UFO sightings, you name it. And don't forget, this is a community radio show, which means you are all part of this Yowie Central community and the Main FM community. You're all welcome to contact me if you've had a Yowie encounter or you've had freaky experiences in the bush with orbs or min-min lights or UFOs or anything else kooky and spooky. Get in touch with me via yowiecentral@gmail.com or via the Yowie Central Facebook group if you have a story to share. We're heading to the United States this week for a chat with Varleigh. Varleigh is the creator of a sky and nature observation YouTube channel called Lavender Sky Panther, and it's dedicated to the study of anomalies, oddities and unexplained phenomena in the skies above Miami, Florida. Varleigh also had her own Sasquatch encounter when she was a teenager and has so much fascinating information in her head, I could have kept talking to her for hours. We didn't even get to her ghosts and spirits and demon encounters, so hopefully she'll come back on the show soon. And I also couldn't quite squeeze in the whole interview into this week's show, so I'll play the rest next show. Listeners, meet the amazing Varleigh. Varleigh, welcome to Yowie Central.
Thank you, Sarah. It's very exciting and fantastic to be here with you today.
Now, you have a fantastic YouTube channel called Lavender Sky Panther, which is a sky and nature observation channel, and you narrate collections of images that you've taken each week of the skies in Miami and all the anomalies, oddities and unexplainable phenomena that happened up in the sky. So which is absolutely fascinating, and I highly recommend to my listeners that they check out Lavender Sky Panther on YouTube. It's quite an amazing site. And I learned, as I mentioned to you in the email the other day, I learned so many things just watching one of your shows. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're such a fascinating person, and you have so much to discuss. But I think we've narrowed it down to maybe start with, you had a Sasquatch encounter yourself. Indeed. Back in 1984?
1984.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. It was in Brevard, North Carolina. And I'm going to say something that I've looked up recently because this did happen in 1984. I was about 14 at the time. And I don't mind if people do the calculations. You can know how old I am now. But anyway, doing a little more digging, the reason this is so timely, Sarah, that this is coming up now, and again, I extend my heartfelt thanks to you for having me on the show, is that there are no accidents or coincidences, I don't believe. And for some reason, this encounter has really been prominent on my mind lately. And in fact, I even talked to somebody we'll get to later, who is very much very much in tune, let's just say, with the spiritual realms and whatnot, just to get some better insights of what exactly happened back at that time. So we'll get into the account as it happened, and then I would like to touch on that a bit too about some fascinating insights that came out through this whole thing of having a recall come up at this time about the Yowie experience, which, as I'm sure most of your listeners already know, in the North America, I'm based in Miami, Florida, we refer to the Yowie as Sasquatch, but actually I prefer the Australian term of Yowie. I love it. I love
Do
the
you?
name. Um, Anyhow, so we're going back to 1984 in Brevard, North Carolina. Now, I lived in Miami at the time. Brevard, North Carolina, what I was going to get to, and this is not a joke because I know you deal with the paranormal and other things on your show, Sarah, but it's located in Transylvania County.
Oh,
And I
wow.
don't think I need to explain to anybody who's found in Transylvania, or at least in the lore. But anyway, it was near the Pisgah National Forest at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountain Range. And we had gone on a family and family friends. It was a trip in the summer. I did not want to go, just as a little preface. I really did not want to go. If you can imagine a girl at that age where your friend network is everything, your little social network. I suffered from car sickness. I didn't want to go up in the mountains. I was a beach person. Anything you can throw at it, I did not want to go. Now I have a different perspective. The woods are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but that's where I was coming from. And also keep in mind back then there was no cell phone, no internet. I don't even think there was fax. So, and any, phone calls, if I could get my hands on a phone, would have been astronomically high in price and prohibitive. So that's why I was kind of really bummed out, let's just say, as a kid not wanting to go. Anyhow, we get there. We'll fast forward a bit. We get there. We've been there a couple of weeks, and on one of the nights, it was just a couple of days before we were set to depart back to Miami. We were a family, a member, and I were sleeping in a large room, and there were two separate beds spaced about 8 feet apart in the room, and they were situated in the room parallel with some sliding glass doors. And behind us, where the headboard would be, was obviously the wall perpendicular to the glass, which was overlooking, by the way, an overwhelmingly beautiful, breathtaking view of the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And there was a little wooden deck out there past the glass, and then it was just a drop off, an overhang straight down to really far below. And that's pertinent. That becomes something, you'll see why I'm mentioning that later. But anyway, so there's like a horizontal band window going over our heads. And that's like starting at about 5.5 feet above us, if you're laying down on the bed, and no glass. It was just screened in windows. And the person that we were staying with, she had been staying there alone for a couple of weeks ahead of us. And she's like, "Oh, just leave the sliding glass door wide open. It's fine, nothing, And I'm, coming from the city, and I'm like, "Well, won't like a raccoon or like a snake come wandering in? I don't feel comfortable with that." And she's like, "No, you're just being, oversensitive. Don't worry about it." And I'm like, looking at my other family member, like, "I'm not okay with this. Are you?" So long story short, after the friend left, we closed the sliding glass door just to about a 5-inch crack. And even then I wasn't feeling good about things, but regardless. So that's all important because I couldn't, get to sleep right away. So we're both lying there kind of looking at the ceiling. And we had just finished chatting for, it had been about 10 minutes of silence. And then all of a sudden, from behind me, I hear, it was like it's hard to explain. I first heard some heavy footsteps kind of dragging through gravel, and it was like whoever it was, because at that point it wasn't yet clear until some more signs came up, that it was like somebody kind of facing the wall where we were, kind of listing forward bearing down onto the left leg. And the right leg was kind of like, it was like a step with the left and a dragging with the right. And then in comes this really loud, heavy breathing with a little bit of a rasp snarl at the end of it. And at that point, I was so confused because, first of all, I'm a night owl and my ears always perk up at any noise. It's like I could be a overnight watch guard anywhere. It's just like I will not go to sleep. I hear everything. And so what caught my attention was, okay, this thing is massive. And I know I couldn't see out the window at this point, but the feeling, I'm very intuitive. The feeling was, this thing is really tall. And combined when started to hear the breathing was like equal with the windows or higher. And it felt like this thing was hunched over, again, kind of listing down onto the left leg. And so I hear this massive breathing, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how I know this, but that is not a bear. And anyway, it's on twos. It's not little padding on footfall, little footfalls on fours. And I'm hearing two steps and I'm hearing a dragging. And it was like, not that it was wounded, but it just even felt like this thing was tired, like exhausted, whatever it was. And at that point, I'm like, it's not a man. It's not an animal. Is it? What? Because at that point, I never believed in a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. That didn't even cross my mind. So I'm like, okay, but this is not computing. Something does not compute here. It was breathing so loud and had this, little bit of snarl to it, very, very loud. And so at that point, I look over to the family member and I'm like, hey, like at a loud whisper, do you hear that? And I was panicked because it was not a very long stretch, footstep wise, for that thing to get to where the sliding glass door was open. And so at that point, I almost didn't care if it heard me, but I was like, hey, do you hear that? And my relative was like, yeah. And I'm like, what is it? And the family member was like, I don't know. And at that point, I'm the type of person who, when facing fear, I go for it. It's like if it's going to be you or me, I'm sorry, you're going down. Like I'm going to defend myself. I'm not going to sit there and wait in the corner. And this actually happened. The sidebar here. We had a hurricane and all the power was out for over a week. And we did have looters come to my window and tried to come in. And I went up and slammed it on them and everything. It's a whole nother story. So when it's fight or flight, I fight. I just come out. I'm not going to sit there. So that's important because I was ready, kind of bracing myself to get up, run to the glass and slam it because my family member was the closest one to the glass. And I'm also got that protector guardian streak. And I'm like, no way is anyone going to hurt one of my own or anybody I know or even a stranger. So, anyhow, I hear the snarl breathing, but then and the dragging in the gravel. And then all of a sudden it stops. It goes dead silent, the noise. And at that point, I would say that the figure, whatever this thing was, because I'm still trying to process and explain it to myself, a justification of what this could be, because it's not adding up. It stops in between where our beds are. Of course, on the other side of the wall, I'd say it was anywhere between 6 and 10 feet away, between where we were and the other side of the wall. And I'm like, okay, what now? What is it doing? Is it going to lean in and look, or what is it doing? So, anyhow, it was just silent. And then, right about that time, my mind's still wandering, like, what's going on? I all of a sudden feel my blood turn ice cold, and I mean ice. Like someone going to the freezer or the cooler, getting a big pitcher of ice water, pouring it through, pushing it through the veins, moving slowly down my right arm down to the forearm. And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I've never had this happen before." I am no other word to explain it or describe it, but petrified. When somebody says you're petrified, that was petrified. I could not move. Everything was like lead, and I have never before or never since had that reaction. And I've been in dangerous situations since then, or fearful ones. Anyhow, long story short, I could not for the life of me get to that glass door. My mind was like, "You must go," and my body was like, "You're not moving." And so that really freaked me out. And then on top of it, I didn't know what this thing was doing. And then at that point, my mind is like, well, is this just some crazy guy with a shotgun, and this is it, you know? But I'm like, no, I kept defaulting back to it was more animal like. There's something just not right about this. It didn't sound like a human. It kind of did with the breathing, but more animal, but somewhere in between. So long story short, we're frozen and I'm just like, okay, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to see this big black scary silhouette of a man or something, at the window any moment. But it didn't come. Waiting, didn't see anyone at the door. And I'm like, what the heck? It should already, this person or whatever it is should be there by now, right? So nothing. And then about that time, my relative sees a beam of light come down from the opposite side of where this thing was and shine down on the deck. And what was bizarre about that was it was coming down at such an angle that there's no way it could be headlights from anyone coming up on the road because the whole house blocked where the road was. And there's no way it could have been a person standing with a flashlight, or you guys call it a torch, I understand,
That's right.
because of the angle. The angle, and the person would have to be an expert at levitating over a valley because there was no ground and there was no way they could shine it at that angle. And I didn't see it specific because at that point my mind is still like computing something that will never, jive, as I'm looking at the wall. And by the time I looked over, it was gone. And it didn't like, translate through the room like a car coming up with like the lights would kind of carry over through the room. It didn't do that. It just vanished. At the same time, I'm like, hey, where's our friend? Because I didn't hear any footsteps trailing off back toward the road away from us or back into the woods away from us, nor to the deck. It was just like gone. I didn't hear a peep, not the breathing, nothing. And so it vanished about the same time as this beam of light. So, of course, I think some of your other, people have experienced different unique things with this phenomenon. You just kind of when you can't justify it, you either become like fearful for life, or you just kind of tuck it away somewhere in a folder in the back of your brain, and you're like, okay, since I can't label it, we'll just put it back there for a while. And so that's pretty much what happened. I've just tucked it away, and it's been like in dormant storage somewhere until now. There's been something, pulling it up, and I know the reason why, which we can get into later. But all that to say, this encounter was very fresh on my mind. And then about the same time, something led me to find this psychic intuitive. And it just so happened she's from Australia. And then I, through that, kind of thought, let me learn more about Yowies. And then I just happened to find the channel you're affiliated with on YouTube. And then all of this just happened to line up. And so there's a very exciting portion about even the psychic's take on this that I'd like to share, but I know I've been rambling, so I don't know if you
Oh
want to
no,
interject.
no, I'd love to hear about it. So, yeah, absolutely. So, how fascinating and frightening at the same time.
There's one little tidbit I forgot to mention. So after there was nothing, we eventually kind of thawed out, or at least I did, and we excitedly woke up the host of the place demanding she call the police or the guard at the gate. And she's like, "There's nothing. You're, whatever. What's going on?" So she's annoyed that we want to call the police. I'm annoyed that she could care less. And because we know what we heard. So then the guard from the guard gate comes up and he's like, there's nothing around here. Don't worry. You're just paranoid. You're from the big city. And then three other police officers come. So I'm thinking to myself, well, it can't be nothing if three other police officers come. But anyhow, that just was a little follow up. So it's like, oh, yeah, it's nothing. Meanwhile, we know deep down, of course,
Yeah,
it's something.
exactly.
Anyway, so now I will pause. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, that's fine. So afterwards, I'd love to hear this connection, this Australian connection. Then, so you just stumbled upon serendipitously a psychic intuitive who happened to be from Australia, and they had some really interesting insights as to what's going on with regards to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yowie, the hairy man phenomena that's all over the world.
Yes, absolutely. And so I found her, and if it's okay to mention, I would love to give her credit. It's
Yeah.
okay. Her name is Solreta Ontaria, and her website is www.solretapsychicreadings.com, and it's just SolretaAntaria for anyone wants to know. I highly recommend her for anybody that's had an experience that they're not feeling good about, because the insights that come through her, I'm still there're just no words. And I ramble on obviously, and I'm speechless for what she tapped into. So she's extremely gifted. And just to back up a second, I've had a pretty much a massive, you can call it, great awakening or spiritual awakening back in 2010, when basically my entire life cracked open, everything kind of went away. And I would always like to say it cracked open and fell apart so things could fall back together in the way they really meant to. So at that time, I had a high powered job, gone. I had a marriage, gone. I had something else left, to the house. And so when people like hit that, it all went away at the same time. You could think, wow, that's the abyss. That's like an abyss moment in your life. And it is, but man, that's the time when you really crack open and open your mind and open up everything, if you accept that invitation to do that through those circumstances, to get at what are you here really for, your mission in life or your purpose. I think a lot of people at a certain point go, why am I here? I know it's not to go work 9 to 5, pay taxes, pay bills, and do this. There's so much more to it. Absolutely. And so, anyway, all I had to say is through that cracking open over the past 11 years, that has also guided me to seek out and talk to extremely very gifted. I don't even like the word psychic. It's more like intuitive or spiritual guide,
Mhm.
or like earth spiritual guide. Because when you find the right ones, boy, you really start to unlock some very fascinating things about yourself that really, really, you need to discover, which you can't when you're on the rat race or the hamster wheel of, 9 to 5 and do this and do that. All the things don't really matter, and you find the things that really do matter are connecting with nature and understanding your spiritual gifts within you. And so when people say, yeah, I want to know who I really am, it's not like, oh, I'm a role, like a job or this or that. No, it's you are, you can consider yourself a spiritual being having a human experience. And people often talk about this in metaphysics circles. Or you consider yourself just a 3D being having a spiritual experience. So which way are you going to look at it? And depending on which way you look at life, you're going to have a totally different experience. So I choose the I'm a spiritual being having a 3D, tactile human experience, because man, the possibilities are endless what you can discover. And that being said, so I found Silretta. I can't even quite connect how I found her. I'm trying to trace back, but it was one of those things. You're looking on YouTube, one thing leads to the other, and this is kind of a little bit of a bridge with the beam of light and the Yowie, the Sasquatch, to the. I know a lot of people report that there's like a Sasquatch, and then they've seen a UFO. There's some kind of. They don't know if they're connected or separate. What they're happening, why they happen to be in the same vicinity around the same time. And I was looking around on the internet for anybody else kind of see a beam of light and a and a creature at the same time. And somehow that led me to her site, because she's very much in touch with and open to the whole ET realm and the idea of star seeds. And I'm probably going to throw out some stuff that might not make much sense, and we can talk maybe later about it. But anyway, this is important because I needed to find someone who was open to the idea of ETs and Yowies and everything else in between. And I know you mentioned on other shows, somebody had mentioned, one of your guests, that's probably not a great idea to go to just a traditional psychiatrist. No offense to any psychiatrists out there,
Yeah.
or psychologists about your event, because if you're not open to much greater things in the spiritual realm, that's kind of not going to serve you if they're very much into parts and pieces and 3D, and oh, that must mean that you have this character trait or whatever. No, you need to blow it way open and open the mind and expand it, and deal with people who can tap into things much more easily than if you're just learning how to do it yourself, with the spiritual side of things. Anyway, long story short, I found her, and she connects with the ET side of things. She can speak a light language, which flows through her from kind of like the ET or other realms. Very fascinating. If you
Wow.
look, what she's about. So once I saw that, I'm like, bing, she's my girl. I'm gonna, have a session. And I always love to explore and do these sessions, even if it's just to, either for when you're in the dumps and get encouragement. I find going to these spiritual readers fascinating. And sometimes they come up with some really great ideas I never would have thought of. They're like, yeah, you're like in Central Florida, but it's winter. It's like ice cold. And I'm like, okay, it will never get like, they said like snowing. And I'm like, no, no, it's never going to snow there. I don't, they're totally missing it. Right. And then I put it together. There was a reason why I needed to go see emperor penguins, and they were only there at this one specific place at this park. So I'm like, wow, they got it, but I wouldn't have really thought about it. So anyway, I'm just illustrating that it's sometimes just fun to go have some readings. Nothing needs to be wrong. Nothing needs to be like, oh my gosh, I have to solve this mystery. But in this case, I did want to solve a mystery, and she was game, no pun intended. So um, so we have a chat, and I said, we've talked about a bunch of things and a bunch of experiences, including UFO experiences I've had in dream state, which turns out they may have been real. That's all another story. However, I started mentioning, there, and I did it a little cryptic on purpose, just to see if she'd pick up on it, without my, like leading the witness. And I just said, yeah, I had this encounter, and there was like this big, I don't know if it was like, I know it wasn't a bear, but it was like this, I just wasn't sure. And she goes, oh, a Yowie. I'm like, oh, okay, go for it. She clearly got it right on track. And so what came out of her perspectives with it was very interesting. So she said, like, and she was even kind of mystified because something like this scenario hadn't really ever come up in her readings before. And she's like, it's almost like this being sensed you even prior to going on the trip. It had like a tracking sense. Like even when you're contemplating going, it may have been involved. And then when you actually got there, it was just kind of seeing, what everything was about and observing us. And it could have been like, I'm going to kind of, it may seem like a little offshoot, but this is really relevant. And it might have come up to you, up toward the cabin or the house, a little like the prince coming upon the princess asleep in the forest, like a curiosity and a wonder at the energy signatures and the light emitted. Because I do have a capacity, and I've really been noticing it now lately in the last couple of years, that I'll be walking through a grocery store and I could be down in the dumps, have a really crappy day, really bad mood or sad. And all of a sudden, people light up around me and they're smiling and looking at me like in childlike wonder. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Because I'm not feeling very high vibed at the moment. And there's just this inner light that shines beyond my control. And it's kind of like she was saying, like these people are getting like little bliss hits. They're like in a little bit of trance. They're feeling the God presence and essence. It's a very beautiful thing. And that ties into a very real thing mentioned in books by Dolores Cannon. I highly recommend people go look at her work. There's a book called The Three Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth, and that's a whole other subject on its own.
Mhm.
But she talks about there being three waves of people that come, and her clients were people that came to her kind of like, instead of doing hypnosis, it was deeper than that, and they used it for healing, called quantum healing. And she would put them in somnambulistic trance state. So that's the deepest form of being out of it, essentially, where your subconscious isn't trying to override and explain and fill in details. You're like, so like she's just dealing with the superconscious and the thing like your higher self, which isn't going to interrupt and seize the full picture. So anyway, she talks about the three waves of volunteers, and one of them is that there seemed to be a trend of people coming through. The first one, the older ones that are probably like in their 60s or 70s or older now, that came to Earth to kind of tear down walls and old paradigms that no longer serve humanity or the highest good for the planet. And then the second wave are the generators, the antennas, the uplifters, people that just naturally generate and anchor positive energy and light here to assist with the ascension of the planet. And then there's the third wave of the ones that just kind of come in and bask in the sun, so to speak, and keep the good vibes going, right? So I think I have like one foot in the first wave, tearing things down, one foot in the generating, because made total sense to me. Because I'm like, this has been a mystery in its own for me for the past couple of years. Like, why are people lighting up? This is kind of weird, but okay, it's good, it's positive. But what am I doing without knowing it? And so that's all to say that probably I could have been generating such a light, and it was curious, right? Now, taking her perspective a little bit further, I thought, you know what? Let's flip the script on this. I know our first initial thing is, oh my God, a Yowie, I'm scared, or Sasquatch, oh my God, it's going to kill me. Why don't we ever think like, oh my God, it's an amazing interdimensional being, and this is pretty amazing. Let's just see what happens, right?
Mm.
I know people are in more threatening situations, but in this one, it's just like, okay, why is it showing up, or why is it letting itself be seen to me? There's got to be some real magic in that. It just doesn't show itself to everyone. So my take on it is, I got a feeling in my encounter. I always had the overwhelming feeling that, okay, that was a little weird. I didn't like the snarling and whatever, but it didn't come to the door. And after it just vanished, I still had a sense that it wasn't going to do any harm. And now, given the take that the psychic brought into it too, is she said that, I do get that it was tall, and she mentioned the height, and it felt dark and stringy, hairy like, and I got that same impression at the time. And she goes, but that light could have been something that would have come closer to you had it not been for the Yowie being there, had it not been for the Sasquatch. And that got me thinking. I was so happy that came through the reading because, the ice cold veins, she said, yeah, they have powers, telepathic powers, and it wouldn't surprise me that it could freeze you. But, for my protection. And I thought that makes total sense. The paralysis could have been generated by the Sasquatch to protect me or us, to mask our heat signature from being picked up or sensed by whatever that UFO was. Because I'm going to call that beam of light a UFO. I don't know what else it could have been. And he may have like thwarted an attempt or led the thing away from us or whatever, right? That, or let's go a little bit further. Maybe they were working together, and that's the question, but I didn't get that sense. It could have been that, the UFO came up and then boom, it was time for him to go and he vanished up into the ship. But I don't think that was the case. I think they independently vanished and that might have been the relationship. So the point is, it almost doesn't matter for me personally, definitively to know exactly what happened. I'm just so excited through Solreta's, insights to even be able to look at three different scenarios, or there could even be more of what was going on. But it was absolutely an affirmation, that the event took place. Then the most magical experience came at the very end of that after we talked about that. Then she was picking up on a being coming through. And it was a Yeti, a white one, and it even guided her to do a drawing of her, which she did do because with her reading, she also does like aura drawings when you start out to
Mhm.
tell you what your aura is and what energies you're in. And anyway, so this being, spirit being, comes to her through our talk at the end, and it was a white Yeti. She has a clear picture of her. She's beautiful, and she came with like an invitation, a flower, kind of like the ones if you've seen the movie Avatar, the one with the Blue Panther people.
Mhm.
Um, the beautiful tree of life or whatever it was called. Those beautiful wisp-like. Gorgeous little phosphorescent flowers coming down. That's kind of what she said she was holding. And that was interesting because I've never thought, okay, so the invitation was to communicate with her if I wished, like in dream state or meditative state or whatever. And whenever you do that with a being, you just make sure you envision yourself protected and like golden light or white light or whatever if you want to do that. Now I'm not. I'm kind of like a little like I don't know if I want to go that far. Some
Mhm.
people astral travel and do all these things, and I'm like I'm spiritual, but I'm okay. Like if anyone's familiar with the movie Star Wars, I'm like I don't mind being like a Luke Skywalker. I do not want to be Yoda. But my life path
Right.
is saying, "You're gonna be Yoda." And I'm like, "No." And it's like, "Yeah." And so I have hesitated, although everyone does astral travel, by the way, when you're dreaming. Apparently you do it. And
Really?
so
All
that's a
right.
whole other story, a whole nother topic for a whole nother time.
Oh my God, I'm going to
But
write
long
that down for next time.
yeah. Oh, well, I have a bullet list of like 100 points to show
Yeah.
you anyway. But this is
I
all
think we have
fascinating
enough
because I thought,
material for like for a few years worth of
take it on
shows,
the
I
road,
think. Yeah.
do a road show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyhow, the invitation, it was just how beautiful. And at the same time, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Like I'm
It's a bit
fascinated, but do I
scary.
want to go that far? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like I'll put my toe in the pool, but I don't want to put my whole foot in. Do I? And so now I'm just starting to I was getting comfortable with, okay, why not? It's a beautiful invitation. As long as you protect yourself spiritually, when you do these things, you just say their name 3 times. And she got a specific name even. I'm not going to say it now for, privacy reasons for
Yeah.
the Yeti and for myself, but it was beautiful. So you kind of just say the name in your mind or out loud, however you want to do it. And I just said, okay, I'm here. And, if you want to connect with me through dreams, or if there's a message you want to give me, and you just kind of close your eyes and see if anything comes. And it's not going to be like a voice in your ear, it's just kind of a feeling. And so I decided to do that. And then, what happens? We connect, and you say, hey, do you want to come on the show then? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what the invitation from that Yeti meant. So I'm about to
Right.
cry. It's so beautiful. Because I'm like, what? An invitation, a flower? I don't understand. Like, why would I talk to her? I mean, it's beautiful. Sure, I will. I'll talk with anyone. But I'm like, but wait, what? I don't get what the invitation is. And then it's like I had to be ready to say, okay, yes, let's talk. And then this happens. So then even before coming on the show, I'm like, okay, so and so. Now the show's in place, and I have a feeling you had something to do with it. Wink, wink. Anything you want to come through, just say it through me about Yetis or Sasquatch or whatever you want. So
Yeah.
that's where we are.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh, how wonderful. So, have you got any feeling of perhaps what message, what that beautiful being wanted you to
You
share or
know what?
transmit?
I'm so happy you are asking that because that's a good reminder. I did literally ask about a half hour before our meeting now. And I just tried to check in really quick and say, hey, said the name 3 times. Is there anything you want to bring through? And again, it was so subtle, it's almost imperceptible when it talks back to you, but you get good at really listening. And over, 11 years of my spiritual growth here, I've gotten really good at listening to the intuition, the higher self. And in this case, trying out connecting with this gorgeous being. And so I said, okay, anything you want to bring through. And I didn't expect an answer. It's really hard to get sometimes, at least for me. And I just really listened and I just got talk about just the enormous love coming from the heart space and how everyone needs to live from that. It's touching because it's so beautiful, because it means not just love for each other one on one, but
Yeah.
love for all of life, plants, animals, all of it, the sky, the water. Everything is a sentient being. Even the earth itself is a sentient being. It pulses and breathes. You can see it from space. You see on instruments, they show the actual globe. Or, I know a lot of people are into flat Earth, but I still go with the globe. But it doesn't actually matter at the end of the day. But it's what you believe is what you believe. And then you grow and you have different beliefs if you're going to grow. But you can actually see the outline, the profile of the Earth, the sphere, pulsing in and out a little. And it's like the Earth is breathing. It's just exquisite. When you think of everything is a sentient being.
You're listening to Varleigh on Yowie Central, and you're on 94.9 Main FM. I think that connection with many of our Indigenous peoples, I think in your country as well as mine, have cultural knowledge going back millennia of these creatures, and often they're known as the guardians of the forest, guardians of. I mean, there's bad ones too, as our Aboriginal people talk about. There's bad ones and good ones, but the good ones are the guardians.
And I do have actually a few quotes from different Native American tribes that I found on an excellent website that I think it's fun for anybody to go check out, ya-native.com. And it talks about North American tribes. And if you don't mind, I'll read some really short quotes of
Yeah,
what
I'd
they
love you
say
to.
about
Yeah.
Sasquatch. Okay. And I'm a big etymology person. Like in languages, I want to know where the origins of the words come from. And I have that for Sasquatch. I didn't look it up for Yowie. I really love to know what the origin for Yowie is too. But anyway, when I was looking around for that, let me just see if I can just say real quick. There are two versions on that, depending on which one you want to go with. But basically, it was from the Northwest Pacific, one of the tribes, one of the languages. So one of the tribes in around 1929, it was the Salishan language of the native language of the Pacific Northwest, and it's like Sak-ek, and it means a race of hairy man monsters. That's what it means. Now, if you go to the more anglicized website, like the Canadian Encyclopedia type things, they're going to say a different story. So they say still 1930s, but this it's a white man's interpretation of the Salish word, Sak-et, and meaning wild man or hairy man. So either way, it comes from that. That's just a little, aside. But now what's really interesting is back to this website. The author is covering all kinds of tribes, the Northwest and West of the Rockies. And so with the Hopi, Sioux, Iroquois, Northern Athabascan, he starts off with the Lakota or the Western Sioux. And there, Bigfoot is called, and I hope I say it right, Chie-Tanka. And Chie means elder brother, and Tonka means great or big. And the Sioux simply called him the big man, which actually I favor that to Bigfoot. I don't know, I just thought Bigfoot was disrespectful for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you're materialized, like a woman in meat market, you're reduced down to your foot,
Yeah,
No,
that's true.
so
Yeah,
here's this
yeah.
beautiful spiritual being, and I know it's the tracks, but some don't leave tracks, they're interdimensional. Anyhow,
Yeah.
one quote from somebody in the Lakota tribe said, I think the big man is kind of a husband of Unksa, the earth, who is wise in the way of anything with its own natural wisdom. Sometimes we say that this one is a kind of reptile from the ancient times who can take a big hairy form. I also think he can change into a coyote. Some of the people who saw him did not respect what they were seeing, and they are already gone. Now, already gone, I know doesn't mean they that the creature killed them. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting that they are bringing in the reptile reference, and
Yes.
we'll talk about that too. Maybe it's a part two or whatever. In Dolores Cannon's work, she talks about the phenomenon about screen memories, and this is in the book called that she has called The Custodians, which goes through detailed accounts of people who have had ET experiences. And mainly it kicks off with them noticing they have a missing chunk of time or like a time freezing happening. And in that somnambulistic state of trance, they go back and they see details and screen memories where the last thing they remember, before missing the time is like a big owl will fly over their head or some type of hawk, and then when they go deeper into the trance state, they find out that no, this was like, an alien that had an appearance that wouldn't have been palatable to the person or understandable. And so they kind of just take that form to put you at ease or whatever it is they need to do. Anyhow, that was a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
But back to our Native American quotes, or just a couple more I'll mention. And then, if there's time, I was going to touch on another nearby Sasquatch experience that happened in 2011, 5 miles from where I was. So, a couple of more quotes from Native American Indians. The Dakota, okay, we had the Lakota, and now we'll go to Dakota. They exist in another dimension from us, but can appear in this dimension whenever they have a reason to. See, it's like there are many levels, many dimensions. When our time in this one is finished, we move on to the next. But the big man can go between. The big man comes from God. He is our big brother, kind of looks out for us. 2 years ago, we were going downhill, really self destructive. We needed a sign to put us back on track, and that's why the big man appeared. Then we have the Turtle Mountain Ojibwe in North Dakota, and they call the Bigfoot Rougarou.
Uh-huh.
And Rougarou appears in symptoms of danger or psychic disruption to the community. And I love that, catching it perfectly. Psychic disruption. That implies other forces are messing with our minds to put us in a certain state, kind of like now, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Then we have and Rougarou, they believe, came from the French word for werewolf or loup-garou. And since the French had big influence on this tribe. Then we have the Hopi, and some of the elders say the increasing appearances of Bigfoot are not only a message of warning to the individuals or communities to whom he appears, but to mankind at large. They see Bigfoot as a messenger who appears in evil times as a warning from the Creator that man's disrespect for his sacred instructions has upset the harmony and balance of existence. To the Hopi, the big hairy man, in quotes, is just one form that the messenger can take. So that's it for the little excerpts from the Native Americans in North America. And then, if you want, I'll just tell you in like two sentences, flashing forward again to September 11th, 2011, in Brevard, 5 miles away from where I had my sighting in 1984. I looked up to see, hey, any other accounts out there of what I saw in that area? And I found that a mother and daughter saw a 9-foot white furred creature outside their tent area. They could see it with some moonlight, and they were camping at Davidson River Campground in the Pisgah National Forest, just outside where I was. And there were 8 other people in the group, but they didn't see it because they weren't, coming out of their tent. And then the women just said, "Oh, did you see what I saw?" Like they both went into their tent and were comparing notes. And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And then apparently they just stayed in their tent. I don't know what I would have done, but I don't know that I would have just stayed in my tent.
No, I
But
don't
everything
know.
was okay after that. One other tidbit related that I researched now after the fact, after speaking with Silretta and getting these great insights, I just thought, what else is in that area? And I don't know, are you familiar with the phenomenon happening in North Carolina? It's called the Brown Mountain Lights. Have you ever heard of that?
Vaguely, but no, tell me about it though, because I
Right,
just
because I had not. And now I'm seeing that this whole encounter, I mean, not encounter, the phenomenon of the Brown Mountain Lights is only uh, 88 miles away from where I had my Sasquatch experience.
wow.
And it's a well-known legendary phenomenon. Apparently, the government's been out there 3 times to check it out, came away with nothing, like what it is, no conclusive explanation. Not that I trust the government. That's a whole nother issue. However, also the Appalachian State University, they are like dedicated, have a team dedicated to studying it and trying to figure out what it's about. Also, psychics and paranormal investigators. Everyone's been out there, but nobody can quite put their finger on it. Now, the Mountain Lights, they're called ghost lights. They're an orb phenomenon happening in Morganton, North Carolina, in the Linville Gorge area. And so there's, of course, the romanticized lore about the mysterious orbs over the forest. Again, it's a Pisgah forest. There was a war there. Oh, let me do this right. So, according to the Cherokee legend, around 1200 AD, there was a great battle fought there in that area with the Cherokee and the Catawba Indians. And they're saying the lights are, Indian maidens still searching for their men who died in battle. Okay. I'm not going to go with that. However, the physicality of it is some say that they're white, they're red, they're orange or yellow or blue. They can be seen, they're seeing like large balls like fire or little small candle lights of orbs, either floating near to the ground or rising up high up into the sky above the trees. And they say the best time to look at it is in the fall when the trees are, when the leaves are gone. You can see it much better. And supposedly there was a somewhat local, I think, bluegrass musician, Scotty Wiseman, who wrote a song about it. I haven't gone and listened to the song. I don't know if it's cringeworthy or good, but it's called "The Legend of the Brown Mountain Lights."
Oh, I might have to check it
And
out.
the lights have been reported there for hundreds of years, and there's some YouTube, things that you can find and see some images about it.
I'd love to hear more about your YouTube channel. Lavender Sky Panther is the name of your YouTube handle. Can you tell the Yowie Central listeners a little bit about what you cover on your podcasts and some of the interesting, incredible phenomena that you've noticed in the skies?
Thank you for that, Sarah. And sure, I would love to expound a little bit on it. So it turns out in 2018, there happened to be some kind of event that was just so extraordinary that happened above my home, right above the roof level. It sounded like a sonic bomb, and that I just have to leave it right there for now. I'll keep it kind of generic.
Mhm.
But just know that it just felt like something was really hitting the house, and it startled me enough that I thought, okay, where do I go to be the safest? What should I do? And this ties back into the spiritual aspect of things. You can like flounder around in panic, like somebody about to be bitten by a shark, and you're just flailing around and splashing and like having no aim in life, or you can kind of be calm and try to slow down your heart rate and come up with a plan. And so in that moment, felt like I was flailing at first, like, well, where do I go? This is obviously something physical that's hitting the house. What should I do? And so then I'm like, you know what? I just need to take a moment, go within, deep breath, and ask, the higher self, ask God, okay, what's the plan of action here? What's the best thing to do? And so to my shock, it wasn't like, head toward the bathroom or go to this doorway. It was look up. And I'm like, okay, thanks a lot. You can interchange God, universe, source. In my book, it's all one. We're all connected. Doesn't matter. So I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, universe. That's not really helpful right now because I'm not going to go out and see what might be physically hitting the house at this moment. And so I'm like, okay, I'll take note of that, but doesn't seem helpful. But okay. So long story short, like I stayed up all night to make sure nothing happened again, and I did find out what it was, but I can't really explain that right now. It's not quite appropriate, but just know it was a severe enough event that caused me to go in a little bit of alarm, and through that came the message, look up. That said, I'm still kind of like, all right, I'm baffled. What does look up mean? I just have to, again, put it back in that file folder in the back of the brain and leave it there for a while because I don't even understand what that means. So I just said, okay, show me what that means, and if not, not, whatever. And I did start researching online to see what the event was, and I figured it out through a very long process of 6 months. However, all that to say, I got my little aha moment that this is what lookup means when I came out of a store into a huge parking lot, and I was looking toward the east. The ocean was maybe only, or a big bay, it's only maybe 4 miles away from where I was. And I look up over the sky in that direction, and there is an enormous imprint of a triangle. I'm talking an equilateral triangle in the sky. And when I say imprint, you're not going to see like metal or anything. It was like a void, so like a darker blue than the rest of the sky behind it. Perfect triangle formed by a heavier, what I call cloaking material, or like a plasma. When I say plasma, I'm just referring to something that's heavier than water vapor and doesn't just dissipate in the sky easily. It hangs around like glue. And so there's this thick substance. And if you guys go to my very first show, it's going to be rough around the edges because now I'm at show 75. So I've tried to get more polished in speech and everything else. I didn't know where any of this was going. But you will see that triangle imprint in that very first show. And so I looked at it, and again, it's one of those like if you see a Sasquatch, this doesn't compute. I'm looking at this thing, but there's not supposed to be a perfect equilateral triangle in the sky, imprint or otherwise. What's going on? And so that kind of kicked off, the whole thing of looking up. I'm like, aha, this is what look up means. There's more going on in our sky than we realize. Now, I mentioned, I think, to you off the side that I started my YouTube channel a year ago, just before the whole I just say virus in quotes episode started. So right away, about the second month in, I noticed that I was being heavily shadow banned. It was like the absolute worst time to come out with a channel. As I see like people talking on YouTube around, like this last year was really bad. And
What's
so I thought,
shadow band?
shadow banned is where you, for whatever reason, the censoring powers that be with the YouTube platform, they don't like your attitude or they don't like what you're talking about. And so, like, I can go to comment on somebody else's YouTube channel and I see it, but no one else can. So it's like my comment, no one's ever going to see it, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's also when people want to subscribe, it won't click and subscribe. So I saw my numbers going up, subscriptions. Not that I'm even caring about the numbers. Let me step back a moment. For me, when I started this channel, it was look up, but it was also, is anyone else seeing this? I'm seeing a triangle in the sky. It's not just me. I mean, I stop people in the parking lot. Do you see what I'm seeing? And they're like, yeah. And they walk on. I'm like, like, don't you care? Like to figure out what it is, they just
No,
take off.
care
But at
factor
least I know they
zero.
see it too. Right? It's not just me. They see it too. And so, but it was the type of thing that, again, serendipitous, people started who never would start talking to me about stuff like this, started to take interest when I maybe just said one little trigger word. And so I wanted a place to document what I was seeing. And it would take sometimes like an hour to tell somebody all the insights I had on it. So I needed to put it somewhere because enough people were starting to talk. I'm like, I can't keep repeating myself. So let me just park it over here in a YouTube and I can just send them over there. That's why I did it.
I'm fascinated about how did you come to the theory or the idea that it's a craft, it's an alien craft, and it's cloaking in the sky.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I don't know conclusively. I have a lot of options of what it could be. And to me, that's a better field to work with, a lot of field of possibilities and not narrowing down too much focus on what it is until I absolutely know for sure what it is. What I do see though is this print. So it's a perfect triangle. So you know some type of human hand or technology is involved.
Yeah.
In that sense, I don't know that it's just a military thing like a human military venture, or it could be very well be an ET craft. I mean, not craft, ET made tech, let's just say, because at this point, when I see an imprint, I'm not sure. And the imprint is, let me back up again. The plasma, forms around it to create the void of the shape, if you know what I mean. And if
Yeah.
if you guys go look at that very first show, you'll see what the imprint is. So that's kind of like a foggy, haze around it, forming the perfect lines. So you're seeing the imprint and not an object. And actually, at that point, the moment I saw that in the sky, you'll see it in the show. Whoever goes and looks, I just thought of the way bakers they take either like in this case a brownies, and I cut out a triangle and put it over, and then shook some powdered sugar over it, confectioner's sugar, and
Mhm.
took the little blocking the template away, and then you see the imprint. So like sugar around it forming this imprint of the triangle. For little tongue in cheek, I put that in the first show. The fact that it's perfect symmetry shows intelligent design. Well, intelligence by who? Either humans or ETs, because I fully believe they exist, and I have absolute backup confirmation of why I believe that now. And so, or a combination of both. But when I see the imprint, what does it remind you of? An imprint is a void. And what is the void? It might not be an object. It could also be like a hole or a portal.
Mhm.
It could be a film. They have films up in space that spreads out like reflective film. That's documented. That's like common knowledge. And so this could be just what's happening with film, or it could be a portal or some kind of sensor equipment up there. I don't know. But it also could very likely be cloak and craft. And I'm kind of leaning toward that, like an interdimensional craft where you're not going to see the metal, but you might just see the imprint. Because of the way the plasma is, I like to call tufted, it like bunches up in places, usually at the corners or at specific edges of like these really clean, straight lines, which again don't occur up in natural clouds or in the sky. And so those are my theories right now. Portal, imprint of film or some other kind of tech, something interdimensional we just don't understand, or a cloak and craft. And that was my introduction to, yeah, look up. I don't know too many people have come to me and said, "Hey, did you see that triangle in the sky?" Right? So that was a very clear message. And it was big as day in this huge parking lot. Hundreds of people coming and going through there, and I think I'm the only idiot. I say that fondly of myself, stopping and taking a picture of this, right? And so then that led into five key topics that I thought, if I could just document these five strange phenomenon I'm starting to see. So the kicker, the kickoff was with that triangle. Then I started seeing these popcorn clouds, I call them. They're like stratospheric, but way too low. And they just kind of on the spot show up. It's just like something is generating them right there local. That's what's so strange about it. You could see them forming, and they mask out the sun. And I'm going to put the sun in quotes, and I'll get to that in a minute because it's not really a true sun. I'll get to that too. Um, and so I started to see other things usually coming out of a store and looking up or whatever. Then I saw something that looked like four studio lights, like backlighting through the clouds, shining down from the direction of the sun. And again, I'm like, that's just too perfect. That has a design to it. That's like tech. What's it doing in front of the sun? All that whole show starts talking about the idea of a solar simulator or artificial sun. When I first heard people, I was looking around to see if I could find out what this phenomenon was on YouTube. And I started finding other Earth and sky watching channels, and they're talking about this. And I'm like, these people are flipping crazy. Like, there's no artificial sun.
How can
Like,
that be
what the heck?
possible?
What the heck? No, these
Yeah.
people, I'm not going to say nuts, but what? you know? But then I took a step back and I'm like, hey, Varleigh, let's get a grip here. Remember, you have to be open to everything. Why not be open? Be open-minded for a minute. Let's suspend our belief that okay, there's no such thing as an artificial sun. Well, why not? We're talking about there's no such thing as Yowies or Sasquatch yet. We know they're there.
Yeah.
So let's just pause a minute. I have noticed in the last decade, our sun and living in Miami, Florida, and traveling around the world and coming back, I'm very aware of my environment always. And of course, I grew up with the sun. I mean, it was everything. It's beautiful. Lying in the yard, getting sun on the skin. And it was always a warm, soft, warm yellow, lightly pulsing, beautiful. You could look at a little bit without being blinded. Now, the sun is white, it's fixed, it doesn't pulse, and it is so glaring at times you can't even look at it. And there are other times where you glimpse it and it's a perfect circle. And that would never be with the original sun as well. And so now I'm like, wow, these guys were right. Because now that I've been observing for a long time now, I'm seeing all of these signs. And again, I've got 75 shows now. I thought I would only ever do five that really show evidence of there being something more to it. And in that show too, I looked up patents. You want proof, people want scientific or other proof. Go look at patents. They're easy to find on the internet. And I found some from 1961 and I put it in that show. That's called Illusion. The Sun is Not Alone, Illusions and Other Objects, something like that. Anyway, there is a patent from early 1960s and it shows a drawing and it shows the four lenses that I could see in the sky. So, when you see it and you know where to look, you know it's possible.
And that was Varleigh. How amazing is she? Hopefully she'll be back on soon. And that's all we've got time for this week, folks. Yowie Central will be back, same time, same place, on 94.9 Main FM. And I'll catch you next week.
Out out in the cold, out in the dark. Something's lurking at the edge of the park. People be warned, people beware. There's a storm on the rise and it's covered in hair. Hear him cry, hear him howl, looking for someone to disembowel. Claws like a hook, eyes like coal, feet so big they're gonna crush your soul. They call him Sasquatch. Out in the night when nobody can see, under the darkness behind the tree. Is he a monster? Is he a man? Is he a demon under Satan's command? Hear him cry, hear him howl, looking for someone to disembowel. Claws like a hook, eyes like coal, feet so big they're gonna crush your soul. They call him Sasquatch. Yeah! You might be rich, you pretty young thing, better hide the glint of your diamond ring. Your fancy jacket won't be worth a dime when you're sucking the blood right out of your spine. Hear him cry, hear him howl, looking for someone to